What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. Happy Tuesday. And in this video, I'm breaking down a lot of what, again, I don't want to do, which is why I know I have to do it. And that is the daily accountability. I'm going to kind of fuse that together with the weekly accountability because better late than never. Yesterday, we had a great, though dizzyingly paced weekly accountability session. I keep thinking, man, this has got to be 90 minutes. Um, and it certainly is inside of like any other company. But we had a great time, and special thanks to Lynn for just being so consistent and a fantastic thought partner and collaborator in developing this distributed hybrid L10 on a weekly basis. It's been a lot of fun, super productive. All right, so I'm going to do a like sort of three phases here. And one, we're just going to kind of do an overview on where we're at as a company. And then we're going to look at what's happening today. And then perhaps interwoven throughout that, maybe as a deconstructed third part, I'll just openly remark on a few general items pertaining to the business and the view that I have on our current state and the uh, vision we're casting into the future and a few of the risks, mitigations, opportunities, threats, all of that type of stuff. Okay, let's get into the weekly review. Now, my lens when I'm taking this is, accountability is so critical. And in previous roles, I was responsible to maintain accountability over a lot of people, including people that I reported to. Helping them stay accountable was a big part of the job. That's actually um, was a difficult thing to do in my experience as a COO, as a second in command, was to help the CEO be accountable because they're not obligated to be accountable to you. They're not really like in the same way, at least as employees are. Um, so it would have to be done through more indirect means. It would have to be done through more um, adjacent, complementary approaches. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I have been able to be as successful as I have is because of that. That oblique approach where it's enabling the genius, the unique ability, the 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 zone of genius for the CEO of a company, and doing so in a way that uplifts them and showcases them as opposed to spotlight their vulnerability or weakness or shortcoming. Do it in a strengths-based, future-focused way. That being said, um, knowing that you have to train is different than actually training. And in that same vein, as a CEO, as a owner, operator for VentureMap, I have no one to be accountable to. I mean, obviously, I have to be accountable to my family and my clients, and there's all we could waterfall it down the amount of accountability that I have. But ultimately, if I put something on my task list today and I don't do it, it's just me. I just me who's ultimately gonna feel that, right? It's not like someone's really gonna be left hanging. And any commitments I have for meetings or deadlines, they're all self-imposed. And in many cases, the CEOs who are expecting it, I mean, that's all the people I work for and with, the CEOs. So I'm pretty good at justifying anything. I can push things back and uh, and so it's like that's actually a really difficult place to be in because it really tests integrity and it tests your conviction and what you're doing. Every quarter, I seem to find myself back into that core values, purpose place. Um, and just when I think I've really nailed it, I realize I'm like just at the beginning and, rethinking everything you thought about life in a grander sense, faith, um, my calling, and the philosophy I take to my work, and the business model, and all of that is underpinning the quarter rocks. When you do it right, all of that is enabling it, it's informing it, it's an input into that process. As much as I would wish it's not, if you are serious about it and leave no stone left unturned, is actually means something to you, then it's pretty easy to realize that the culture you have, the building blocks of your culture, your core values, your purpose, your vision, your origin story, all of those things are raw materials that contribute to the curation of a strategy. Of course, that's a non-exhaustive list. You have to have the business model, the environment, the offers, the value ladder, all of the marketing and sales and process and tech, and the staggering and overwhelming amount of things required to actually have to reduce the overwhelming chance of failure that you have as a small business owner. It's a lot. I digress. So accountability, holding yourself accountable is quite difficult. I've come to find, and and I would say the majority of days I'm pretty good at doing it, because I realized about a year ago, actually last fall, when my co-founder, I would say a founding team member, to just really clearly differentiate, as I had a founding team member that was with me, joined as an intern for many years, and worked his way up and became a really valuable partner in the uh, bringing to life a lot of what we have now with VentureMap. But the chokehold was always on that task execution side, and I over-indexed on consensus and on management and collaboration, and I learned a lot. I learned a whole lot. And after, in his absence, I quickly realized that I could 2, 3, 4, 5x, and in many cases, in some cases, actually 10x the speed and quality of just stuff being done, tasks being completed, strategy being executed. And it was horrifying. It was horrifying to think of how many years I had lost, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars have never been made, how many millions of dollars have never been made or realized because of the missed opportunities and the slow sluggishness that was pervasive in that dynamic. I take responsibility for it, obviously. I should have seen it sooner. But hindsight is 2020. It wasn't obvious to me at the time. It was only obvious in hindsight. So um, I dove into strategy execution. I realized that modeling alone isn't going to take us where we need to go. Building out the base logic for the venture map and its current two-panel, overlapping two-panel design was an entry point to something so much larger. And in those days, I used to talk a lot about the Z plane. And I had already studied business architecture for some years, and I still very much feel like I'm at the foothills of a very long um, climb of knowledge and application regarding business architecture. But the concept of a viewport stuck with me even then, and I think the concept of a Z plane, up and down, the vertical plane, and viewports having levels of abstraction on the information was really important in contemplating how what we built is essentially an ontology for the businesses, small business systems, information. And I realized that a lot of my work previous to that had ended at the operations management, project management, team management kind of space. And that so much of my work had kind of ended there, and actually getting into the trenches and getting, like, in a weird way, dirt under my fingernails, and getting into the boots on the ground space of just executing, doing the stuff. I'd been limited by that because, I mean, there's no excuse. I think so much of my focus prior to that had been integrating a cohesive framework from dozens and dozens and dozens of different approaches, and to an amalgamation, and that I thought was resilient enough to withstand the test of time and a multiplicity of use cases across industries and organizational sizes and teams and sizes and personalities and founder personalities and beyond. So because my endeavor is to build um, a portfolio management capability set that allows us to acquire, scale, and sell service-based businesses um, and successfully, and be competitive in that space, and which is to say a private equity space, and do so from a bottom-up standpoint, do so from an underdog standpoint of um, doing it in a near incumbent sort of approach. So I'm kind of too perhaps deep and strategically procrastinating on what I have to do here. But over the year, after I kind of felt like, the venture map wasn't solved, but this framework, this container made sense, that I had integrated sufficiently the things sufficiently to make sense for me. Um, like the dynamics that would go into the organization panel, the dynamics of like intellectually, philosophically, logically, what goes into operations, and then how those things overlap in a coherent life cycle phase model that pertains to employees and customers. Like all of that. That basically took me 5 years to do, which is uh, pretty scary, to be honest. It's pretty scary. Um, I'm grateful for that time. I'm grateful for that investment. It's something that has become such a massive part of my life and an extension of my perspective. It's a way that when I close my eyes and I think of my business, I see this in my head. So to have that coherence has been like, it's fulfilling. It's intrinsically fulfilling. Um, it it's kind of like having a kid in a strange way. They're nowhere near as visceral, um, or like spiritual. I'd say there's a spiritual component because of the fact that it's a calling, and if you allocate thousands, tens of thousands of hours of time over years and years, over 10 years of my professional career has been leading to this point. But I got to the place where I felt like the base model was stable, and we've made pretty significant adjustments. I mean, since last fall, by just refinement, going through it again and again and again, and delivering and delivering and delivering and delivering. And every time I deliver, I find something that I have to refine and finesse and tweak and revise, which is why I say necessity is the mother of invention. Somebody asked me what I do for a living. I'm like, well, somebody asked me what I do. I told them and said, how did you land on that? I said, necessity is the mother of invention. And essentially, most of the larger dynamics of the model have remained unchanged. Like in a larger sense, the organization experience operations containers have been unchanged for maybe 2 years. Within those, there's been a lot of refinement and shifting, but nothing but primarily additions and enrichment and increasing the visual coherence. Um, and now we're at a place where it is like building microchips, where it's like, specifically what what exact posts are going out at what specific times within our content marketing efforts, and how are we running cold outreach, and what are the best practices for that, and how are we nurturing leads to move them down the funnel, and what are our offers, our what's our money model, and how are we applying the neuro emotional persuasion questioning sales methodology to our conversion? How are we applying the theory of constraints lessons from Hormozzi's implementation training? And how are we applying all of the planning horizon stuff we've learned from EOS and succeeding as a management consultant? And like, how are we, it's like building out the Z plane, the operational layer of the primarily the experience, but I mean, so much of the work has been on strategy, execution system, and content marketing, and cold out. I mean, cold outreach is really the newer addition, but those, and then offer development. Really, I guess if you put one tier over my work for the last year, like nonstop, has been customer discovery, like classic customer discovery, running experimentation sequences, customer interviews, and just doing my best for customer understanding, to really, really, really understand the problems, the best practice solutions, how it's currently being done, the gaps in those solutions, and the current state of emerging technology, the intersection with consumer demand, and where I believe the puck is going in that regard, where the intersection is going to be in 12, 24, 36 months, and how we can shift and pivot into a highly scalable and profitable model that we can bootstrap into with limited talent, tools, and capital. So, talk about theory of constraints. Bottom line is, we are in a position where it's a hardening and reinforcement and validation to get the venture map to perform for itself. I said this last year, and I still believe it, that we want this thing to return our investment. We want it on its own. We don't want to have to apply it to another company for it to ROI. To have a positive ROI, we want it to yield a return for its own sake. And kind of like a circus elephant dance, getting up on a stool. That's what I expect from this methodology and framework over the coming months and years, is a surplus output from the half-decade plus investment that's gone into it, and then a strategic move into the development of our first portfolio companies, in-house, like owned portfolio companies. As I view the work that we're doing for clients, is really a untraditional approach at fractional COO work, and it barely meets the criteria for something like that. It is such a stretch. It requires such an extreme amount of intellectual acrobatics to land on the scope of work for what we currently do for people, that it is like barely conceivable that it's a fractional COO type of engagement, which is fine. And it's probably for the best. But I do think there's a thread in that space still. There obviously has to be, as that's the origin from where all this came from. But there's also a thread moving in the agency direction, which is what has encompassed much of my thinking as of late. I've talked about the Z plane, and I'm getting progressively closer to illustrating this concept, which is, you can imagine if I printed this out and I laid it on a desk, and then I came over with like a shoebox or like uh, a 3D block, and I placed it on top of content marketing. That is how I view the initial portfolio company. And it's going to be an agency for content marketing. Um, I think we're going to do an agency for um, funnels, funnel management, funnel design, and an agency for cold email. And I think it'll be like 3 arms. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to go. I think they all could be sustaining, so individual pillars, and it might be wise to do it like that. It also might be wise to keep it all under one roof. We'll see how that goes. Probably if I was pinched to make a decision today, it would be put it all under one roof, but do it progressively and profitably. And that's something that I have had in mind for a number of years, and my wife and I have been planning that for a while. It's this guy, another. That's going to be our agency, and I'm looking forward to that. It'll be fun. We've been field testing for over a year, and a year and a half we've been tinkering to figure out how we want to do that, how to do that, and to do it in a way that adds the next level onto the pyramid. So I essentially think it'll start as a block being placed in this zone, which is basically content automation. It's a media agency, a creative studio, a digital studio, something like that. It's going to allow me to really just go balls to the wall with creative storytelling, content, automations, that whole space, specifically enabling lead generation, nurture, and conversion systems. Basically going to be our acquisition system that we'll bring to life and we'll field test continuously for probably years, which is somewhat scary to say, to be honest. Looking back at over half a decade, how much time has passed, and one way to view it is how little has been done. I certainly thought in my mid-20s that we would be much beyond where we're at today. But I'm not resentful towards that. I'm grateful for the journey, and I'm realistic with the pace of growth. And I believe that we have infrastructure in place to deliver when we scale several levels above where we are currently. So that's the play I see in the short term. That's the play. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention like our own offers. I think where we're landing is for the money model stuff. We're going to do again, very rough sketch, but we're going to basically have the attraction offer, the $1 strategy execution kit, like do-it-yourself kit. And that's going to feed into our lead magnet, which is hey, we're going to build out your growth plan for you. And it's probably going to iterate and optimize a dozen times, but basically our lead magnet feeds into our attraction offer. And that attraction offer is seamlessly going to field into our upsell, which is basically, hey, I could just build all this for you and we can meet live to really get you dialed in. And then the downsell is Okay, I can still build it for you, but we just don't have to meet live. It can all be done asynchronously. And then after that, it's, oh, hey, why don't you join our community, get the accountability on a weekly, daily basis, and on a monthly, weekly, daily basis, and I can help you on a quarterly basis, regenerate your growth plans, stuff like that. That's the big idea as far as I can tell, and that says nothing to this, right? This all of the entire monetization strategy for VentureMap is basically on this idea of strategy execution. All and to be truthful, like technically, that all falls within business architecture if I'm getting really nerdy, but culture and style and content and cold outreach and funnels and experience design and AI enablement and automations, that's all um, like additional opportunities for us to develop agency services and automations and killer products and cool stuff like that. So that's the importance now is focus, 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 and simplification and validation. So, okay, now I'm going to do the thing I have not wanted to do. I've tried to talk myself tired so I could just cancel this and be done with it. But here's where we're at from the week. So from where we're the week, I didn't get a chance to finish all of this, but our MRR target is 10K a month. And my thinking is that we want just VentureMap, just literally the blueprint, and which is basically becoming strategy execution system at 10K a month as like table stakes, bare bones, self-sufficiency. And we're quite a ways away from that. We're going to have to over double what we're doing right now to get there. OPEX is operating expenses month to date. We're on track. We stay pretty lean. I do think we're going to go over though because of all the investment in cold email this past month is pushing our burn rate, but we'll see. VM members, we're growing pretty decently. I don't think we're going to hit 1,000. We could though. We could. We've got at least a month setback with cold email as of yesterday, which is like a devastating blow to our forecasts. But whatever. It is what it is, and we have to be resilient in the face of things we cannot control. Active members. This is for the VentureMap Elite. We've lost a paying member on both the VMO and VME side, which has contributed to churn. It was unexpected, actually, and it definitely shook my previously unwavering confidence in the Grand Slam offer methodology. But I have to trust that it was ultimately meant to be. So yeah, that's where the churn came from, is basically one client dropping off. All right, and I'm obviously still working on the constraints dashboard, so trying to really make some of that, make it work for me in the real world, and then I'll kind of start fusing these things together. And then I've already started a no-code vibe coding project to have this interface easier to read and more integrated. But that's a much longer term. Basically, where we're at right now is this. Like our constraint is here. Like we have to solve that. And that's what we're working to solve. We're going to be getting out over, 2,000 emails? No. Let's see. $26,000 emails a month, which is basically our 44 inboxes, shooting out 30 a day for 5 days a week for 4 weeks. And I'm aiming for the lower end, which is a 1.5% response rate. We could see less than that. We could see more to it. And we're thinking of driving directly to our intake as opposed to our community and then to the intake. So we're going to play with that. I've kind of been had an aversion to pulling the trigger on that adjustment because right now everything pushes to the community so we can have really effective nurture. But removing steps and simplification has been the hill I think we're going to die on this. So we're figuratively speaking, we're moving in the direction of just shooting directly the intakes. If we get a 60% completion rate of basically 60% of people that respond positively um, go through the intake. We think that we'll aim for somewhere around 40% of those people who complete the intake are going to book. And there, that might be a little off, right? Maybe we're going to get 40% of people to do the intake of the responses and 60% to book. I mean, it makes sense if you go through the completion of the intake, you're much more likely to book the call, to review it and refine it. So these are estimates. And in terms of show, we think we're going to get a decent show rate, but that's a thought. And we're just running a 30% conversion rate, which I think is reasonable. Could see it lower, could see it higher, but probably, if anything, it'll be lower out of the gates. Our model suggests that we're doing like 20, maybe 20 to 30 tops, but probably going to be around 23 new clients on a monthly basis once the system hits scale. It was supposed to hit scale 2 weeks from now. It's just to go pretty aggressively in that northward direction, but we've literally set back pretty far by this unexpected Google infrastructure outage, which is bizarre and totally outside of our control. So we have got to be, what it is. I am looking for something. So I was doing a lot of customer acquisition cost calculations. Special thanks to Instantly AI and ACQ AI. But basically, in terms of revenue, let's see, you get revenue back. Yeah, there we go. I mean, it's not like incredibly significant revenue, but it's moving it in the right direction for that base. What I like about this revenue is it's basically calculated based on our Ventrap Elite $100 a month, which as of the last year has a pretty decent retention rate, a pretty decent churn rate. In other words, the lifetime value, I think, is closer to a year. It's like 10 months is what I'm assuming. So I think we still have the ability to hit the MRR before the end of the quarter. And just from Ventrap Elite, I think, especially since my view is that we're going to be detaching operator into the agency, which will be basically a completely different thing and a totally different price point, and a totally different philosophy. So in terms of pricing, I think like the costs are going to be something like $4,000 a month as opposed to $1,000, where we've really been working to aggressively commoditize and productize. So that's going to be different. And let's go ahead and press. So yeah, that's where that is, right? Yeah, I'll just read this out because posterity. The recent reduction in our book of business on the Ventrap operator tier is actually quite timely for the sake of our key initiatives in Q4. Despite the loss of revenue, it is actually advantageous for our available production capacity as much as currently required. What is most critical for us now more than ever is to establish a predictable pipeline with healthy throughput. Essentially, we need a lead generation system version 1, validated via sufficient opt-ins / new Ventrap free members. We currently believe that the primary channel for this will be our cold email system. We are leveraging the constraints analysis provided by a range of resources from ACQ from acquisition.com to drill down to the most important problem to solve in the business / establish leverage over. We're currently using a best-in-class tool stack and industry-leading methodology to condense the learning curve and drive results expediently. Truer words have never been spoken outside of Scripture. Secondly, lead nurture system V1, validated via sufficient bookings after they complete the free growth plan intake. We are applying the 4 primary levers over lead nurture, which is availability, personalization, volume, and I believe it's responsiveness or speed to lead. Yeah, here, 15-minute increments and volume. There we go. I said that by heart. It just goes to show how my reading is. Yeah, we're basically executing on the best-in-class lead nurture. We're putting our own personal spin on it through video ask and AI and Gamma and Miro and strategy, execution, and military theme inspired stuff, right? It's the regrowth plan, it's the community, and it's that. And that is feeding into our sales system. We believe that is the third leg of the stool. We believe that running an attraction offer, which is $1 decoy for the strategy execution do-it-yourself kit, will be a solid approach for a number of reasons. Firstly, it satisfies the requirements of an effective lead magnet, providing a complete solution for the first step of a multi-step problem. The lead magnet will actually deliver on the total value promised and clearly reveal the problem of the problem set of the next step in the process, which is elegantly and effectively solved by the strategy execution system. We will say that they can get access to the do-it-yourself SES kit or $1, or for less than $25 a week, billed monthly, they can get access to the full DFY strategy execution system, monthly strategy alignment, weekly planning sessions, daily executions for personalized coaching, and $10,000 of bonus services, 7-day free trial. Yeah, I wrote this this is actually something I've brought over for the last 2 weeks. I've put a bunch of thinking into it since I've said this piece. Obviously, this sort of decoy offer stuff is what we're thinking, but I do think the one-off is probably best. I think we're going to do a one-off approach where it's basically a digital product purchase within VentureMap free community. I don't think these thumbnails articulate it clearly, but it's basically $1, $1,500, $300 type of attraction, upsell, downsell, continuity. That's how I think it's probably going to go for the initial iteration, as opposed to just like $1 or getting VentureMap Elite. Though who knows, that could be more effective. But for now, I think we'll walk them on the target. I think it's a way to make more money and deliver better results if we take that approach I've described previously. Okay, Rock Review, the thing that I'm focused on delivering for others, but it still remains to be such a difficult beast to tackle. Outbound engine, 100%. The number one most important thing we can do is just solve the number one most important constraint our business has, and that is that's our predictable lead generation. We don't have that. We have unpredictable lead generation by way of inbound leads from content marketing and from discovery within school, which is 100% hit or miss, and referrals, which for all effective purposes have dried up, and we've kind of squeezed that sponge dry. So outbound engine is what we need. Certainly for the success of the next stage of growth in the Z-Plane effort, which is the AI-enabled content agency, that is going to require a predictable pipeline of custom acquisition, which will be spearheaded by cold outbound, or cold email, essentially, guaranteed. And then closely behind that is our media machine effort. We're expanding into case study projects now with a few of our VME members. We're building upon our learnings with a long-standing operator tier client in this space. And we're also working adjacently with another long-term client on an experimental kind of related projects. We've got basically 4 different proof points under development right now that will help us kind of piecemeal together different elements of the value stream of the capability set and to get this ready for deployment. So we can say, hey, it's going to be $300 a month, it's going to be $200 a month, whatever it is, and you can get this scope of work on autopilot, that type of thing, and make it a no-brainer offer, and basically have all the money model stuff assigned just to this. And I've got a potential partner in mind for this, though I don't know if it has any feasibility, but I do anticipate cracking the nut of cold email and being able to deliver to our members through agency-based services in a very accessible and effective manner. But that's going to be a ways out. and then strategy execution system. That's going to be the hallmark of what we do at VentureMap for the foreseeable future. And I had to add this. So this is all these are on track. I really wish I had, just a month to go into a cave and focus on these things with unlimited caffeine and thousands and thousands of dollars of burn to just throw at freelancers and AI models for vibe coding, but we don't have that, so we are operating within constraints, and it's a slower burn. All right, I've already addressed the highlights. To-dos, we basically have, just literally after I got off the planning session, I came to terms with the fact that our cold email inbox provider was like brought offline by what they're calling the Google slap. And basically we've spent the last 2 weeks warming up, I think it's 30 inboxes, maybe more than 30 inboxes. And we're ready to go live actually yesterday with that additional package of inboxes to ramp up our campaign. We have to do a slow ramp, so it still takes several weeks to get those inboxes to their max 30 emails a day output. But we found out that that's actually game over. All those things are toast, and we have to start from scratch essentially, which pretty much sucks. But again, it's outside of our control, so we have to just do what we can. So these things are probably, not really going to happen because we're close to full capacity on the inboxes that we have here. Right, yesterday we were at 198. Today we're going to go beyond that. I think our max capacity is 270. Okay, so we're going to hit max capacity with what we have from the initial batch of emails. And suffice to say, we have not gotten any positive response so far. We got like negatives, all negative responses. So it is a tough field to learn it, but we're going to get that done. So yeah, these things are going to be done, just not in the way we actually expected them, not the scale. I have to put this in there because it's one of those things that's just lingering, which is push all of this modeling effort forward. I've definitely resisted doing that because it's like it's a fusion, right? It's fusion between creative and intellectual and executive, and it requires a massive amount of focus and intent. It's interdisciplinary ability, so it's much easier to clean out your inbox than do that. But it's one of my MITs. It's the most important thing. Get the VM media out for October. Likewise, finishing up my chef eating his own cooking, getting that campaign done is something that I am like actively resisting, not wanting to do, just because of the fact that it's a lot. But every month that I do it, I get a little bit further ahead, and so we're going to get that done. Yeah, we're moving the media machine forward. So it's like I like to stack my primary tasks in such a way that if I do it for one business, it moves multiple things forward. So any project I do a big push forward, it's going to have second and third order effects for other initiatives. That way I can just lower the friction in my mind as much as possible, as there is so much to be done. The things that we do choose to do has to make the big amount of difference and give us as much leverage as possible. Finally, I'll finish by saying our own Q4 strategy. I've been trying to zero into that as I've started the discussion for a while, and we're pretty much there. I'm pretty confident in it. Though even this morning, I'm like, what? How is it even possible to think that we can do all this at once? We need to literally just do one thing. So I'm still in that tension space, but I think we have. I don't know. It's tough. I think we have to do all of this. I think it has to be done. So it's not that we have a choice. And painfully, I landed on this being the most important thing for the week. So if I only do one thing, I have to come to the table next Monday with that completed. And actually added something here about not enough focus, and it's more time on the strategy execution system, which is kind of like me lamenting because it, I have like a little bit of disdain for the strategy execution system just because of how far away it is from revenue generation and how far away it is from the biggest problem. The biggest problem is revenue, not just for me, but for all small business owners. And to have that be the thing is like really frustrating because it's a difficult vehicle to scale. But I think the long view and the mature view is that this is the thing that everything else we built on top of. And in order for us to have the true view of what we're doing here, I talked about placing a block on this. The if you place a volumetric three-dimensional business on top of this to deliver consistently on the model that we've fleshed out over the years, eventually that'll be for the entire thing. Over time, all of these modular blocks will be added that will be generating revenue on their own, and they'll be our own portfolio. And then we'll basically take all the siphon, all the data from that, and build the real life repository, the real life ontology, the real life data lake, the real life self-optimizing business system. And in order for us to make inroads into that, the intermediating steps requires that we have a meticulous, nuanced, unambiguous understanding of the planning horizons for a company, all the way down to the day-to-day level and the task-based minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour level. Because if we know exactly what tasks have to be executed to move a business forward towards its strategic objective, then we can tie those directly with SOPs, with our standard operating processes, with the IT stack, with the relevant business information, and execute on implementing automations and agentic systems, which basically is to say, have a business that built itself. So we have to be able to get there. And it's just not as sexy as selling lead gen. It's not as sexy as selling, hey, we're gonna put 12 qualified appointments on your calendar every month. Right? That's an easier way to make money. And again, sometimes I lament not going that route because it sounds it's a more direct path to revenue generation. But giving up on all this is it would feel like giving up if I did such an extreme pivot in the short term. So that's that. Okay, that's the weekly review. Let's see, where am I? Where's my son Salva? I'll finish this by saying, I am basically here today. I spent some time, worked out, spent some time praying, did a hike, doing some research, and my plan today is pretty short. Living the values, I've already done I always kind of say these two things have to be done in order for me not to be a menace to society. And then crossing the Rubicon, that's my main thing. That's the bold act for today, which is the thing that I put off for like 2 weeks. And I'm putting off by doing this. And then we'll do a couple of LITs, lower important tasks, less important tasks, and which are basically our commitment to thoroughness, which I've just like begrudgingly pushed back all of this for so long. So yeah, except of course, I want to make sure I get a couple of these things done. There's some lightweight stuff in there. All right, so that is that. That's the plan, and we're off. So I take the perspective in this video of reporting to investors, reporting to stakeholders, reporting to people that I'm genuinely accountable to. And I think in one way, saying that community in an abstract way is what I'm committed to. Um, but I don't know. I think it's also there's a cathartic element to having people to talk through these things with, to report to, and um, I'm blessed that I have the ability to speak extemporaneously, to externally process, and to have the the gift of intellect to understand and articulate a lot of this and simulate an environment where I would have to provide a report like this in a more formal manner. Though, of course, I'm very blessed now that I can just wear a tank and do it from my home office and be drinking my sparkling water and just kind of do it at my own pace, and it doesn't matter, right? Because it's again for posterity. So I guess part of it is posterity, part of it is this abstract notion of building in public and reporting to the community who's helping bring this to life. In the same way that we have this hybrid, distributed, experimental weekly business review session. It's the same way that we've got this. I want to see how far that goes before I begin brushing up against the borders, the perimeter, the constraints, which is like how can how can um, it's almost like a crowdsourced, a crowdfunding and project. It's I'm like, how far can I push the visibility? How far can I push the transparency? How far can I stretch the concept of a team member and and a brand? And if a brand is, I love this description. I'll finish with this. A company's unique identity and the meaning it has in people's minds. Like I love that. It's the meaning it has in people's minds. It's like, well, what does this mean? Well, this means a lot more than a mural board to me. It means so much more than some gamma decks and some Loom videos and a few diagrams. It means way more than that. It's about freedom and autonomy and um, wellness, like genuine holistic wellness and enrichment and inspiration and flow and momentum and alignment and integration and these things that are so powerful yet so absent in the commonplace business. And idealistically, I lean into that space whenever I see this. Again, this is the thing I see when I close my mind, or when I close my eyes and I see this picture in my mind at every level of elevation. That's why I consistently will do rifle drills, essentially, like in the Marines, of sketching out this at varying levels of elevation in a time-based manner. And because it's keeps my mind sharp, it keeps my thinking sharp. Here's one of my recent ones. So it's a vision for something greater than we have today. It's a vision that says, BlackRock doesn't have to run the world. Um, we don't have to accept there's what many people suggest is inevitable, which is AI puts everyone out of work, and universal basic income is the only thing that we're really going to be able to look forward to. There's basically some benevolent trillion-dollar tech companies taking care of us poor peasants, and I just can't believe that's what's going to be the case. The American dream, I think, is more accessible now than ever before, and delivering on our passion, on our master class, on our craft, honing our craft, reaching mastery. These are the things that set founders apart, that set business leaders apart, and community leaders apart, and um, having the ontology established, having the venture map, the auto VM, what we're building, this block, agency block, essentially, it is these operating models on top of each of these sections will allow us to disintermediate agencies, that allow us to disintermediate the big players in the game who charge thousands and tens of thousands of dollars for um, gated access to knowledge and best practice and outcomes. I think we're going to be able to deliver the knowledge and the best practice and the outcomes for fractions, for tenths of the cost, if not less, and much faster. I think this is an era of disintermediation, an era of the distribution of networked capability set, and that's why my hypothesis increasingly more so leans into this like build in public cliche, but it's not just that. It's like it's a it's really more of a I'm choosing to view the if I had a board of directors, if I had a venture capital group that was backing me, if I had a highly competent management team that I had, as a CEO, I had to report into and give them the no holds barred, ugly, truth on a regular basis on where we're at. The unvarnished reality had to be uh, articulated. And we had a company town hall meeting. This is what I would say. And I'll just finish with the fact that we have every opportunity on earth right now to um, establish a foothold in the business community, in the small business community globally, that um, liberates business owners, that liberates these entrepreneurs from the yoke of chaos and uncertainty, the yoke of, of fight or flight, of um, reactivity and survival. We can deliver a hedge of, of, of reassurance and prosperity and certainty and clarity and direction and purpose, and in a world that is sorely in need of that. Okay, thanks so much for watching. This is my report for the week and for the day. I appreciate you guys. Posterity, you're great. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Logan out.